Alright, in this video I'm going to show how to install a kill switch on your ATV. And maybe your first question might be, why do that? Well, the reason is, unlike a dirt bike or snow bikes, things like that, when you fall off of a dirt bike, it basically falls to the ground and it's not going to move any further. An ATV can continue to move quite a ways because if it stays on its wheels, it'll keep going, especially if the throttle's pinned or that kind of thing. So this is a pretty risky hobby, so I want to mitigate those risks. So kill switch can help, and it may not be as big of a deal if you're kind of doing casual riding, trails, etc. But for people like me, I'm trying to always kind of go fast or push my skills, and that is increases the risks. And I do kind of live by this saying, well, if you don't crash every once in a while, probably not going fast enough. So in any case, what does this actually do? So important to know the type of kill switch that you have, because some of the kill switches, when the lanyard is pulled, meaning you've fallen off and the clip is removed, some of those will open the circuit, meaning break the electrical connection. Some of them will actually connect the circuit. So depends on what type you have in terms of how you hook it up, okay? So let's get into this one a little bit. All right, so how do you know what kind of kill switch you have? Well, the instructions will tell you, but to kind of further describe actually what that means, I'll show you. So this is the type of kill switch where once that clip is pulled out, so you've fallen off the ATV, the lanyard has removed the clip, this closes the electrical circuit, meaning you've now connected a switch or connected an electrical circuit. To kind of show what that means, so I have my meter hooked up here. Right now the circuit is open, the clip is on there, and I'll show you. So it should make an audible sound when that clip is removed, okay? And that tells you that the circuit is closed now. So see, the lanyard's connected. All right, so I've fallen off, pulled the lanyard, and you can see now that circuit is completed or closed, okay? All right, so let me show you where we're at with this. So I'm going to mount this actually right here because it's really the only place it fits on these quite non-traditional bars. And I'm going to run the shorter wire, this one right here, to a ground. And the probably easiest way is, so the radiator is mounted to the frame, which is steel there, and I've made sure there's electrical connection, and that is a good ground. So I used my meter and took one probe on what is a known good ground, and then just touch it to there. You can hear that that is a circuit, meaning that that is an adequate ground. If you want to be a little bit more thorough, you can put it underneath, right against the metal, use a little sandpaper to sand that off, but I'm going to call that good enough. And then the longer wire I'm going to put to this orange wire here that goes to the coil. The manufacturer of the kill switch recommends that goes to the pulse trigger wire that comes out of the area where the stator is, so that would be over here, and then you'd have to identify that wire and then go to that. The downside of that I see is basically that you are taking the output from that and dumping it directly to ground, which I don't like the idea of that. I think it could cause some problems, and I've heard of some people having difficulty throwing fuses and such every time that kill switch is used. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that orange wire that goes directly to the coil. So normally the coil is mounted up right there on these two bolts there. That orange wire goes into the top one here. I have a couple extra because I have a power command module, but normally you won't have that one. You won't have this green one and this one here. You'll just have a red one going into it like that, red and black, and then this orange one. So we're going to connect in series with that orange one there. And then in line or in series with the ground, just to be a little bit extra safe, I'm going to just add a resistor. Reason that is because then when that kill switch is engaged and basically the circuit is closed, meaning I'm taking the orange wire from the coil and sending it straight to ground, it won't immediately dump all that energy as quickly as it would if you were going through a regular wire with almost no resistance. You'll be adding a little resistor here. I actually went online to see what people recommended, and this was one of the options. So 1 watt, 10 ohm resistor, and that should do the trick. Again, that'll help slow the electrical current to ground, helping to preserve that coil a little bit. But many people do it without that, and it's usually fine, but this is just a little extra precaution. And, honestly, I didn't know if this was a normally open kill switch or normally closed when I purchased it, meaning that is it a switch that when activated, meaning the tether is removed, is it an open circuit or a closed circuit? I probably would have chosen one that when the tether is pulled out or that clip is pulled out, the circuit is open, and then I could have just put that wire in, put it in line with the power to the coil, and that would have worked just fine. But a little bit safer from an electrical standpoint. But this is what I have, and I'm going to use it, and in other ways I like it, so we'll make it work. All right, so here I'm going to show how to connect this connector. I mean, there are a few different ways to do this, but I like this way, and I've made sure that it's going to fit on my ground bolt there, and I'm going to put my resistor in line with that. Again, that's to help keep so much current from going through this ground to help protect that coil. I've already put a little bit of heat shrink tube on here, which again you could just use like electrical tape or that kind of thing, but shrink tubing, it just ends up looking a little bit cleaner. I'll put it over the resistor. Keep in mind resistors do get hot when they're actually being used, so it can melt that a little bit, but keep things from getting corroded and such. So in any case, I'm going to put it over there. Right, so first thing I'm going to do is kind of shorten this up just a little bit, because we don't need all that. All right. You also don't have to do this, but I'm just going to fold that over, get me a little bit more area to contact on my connector. It'll fit in there a little better as I squeeze it. There we are. That looks nice. And that'll go right onto there like that. We'll crimp it. Okay, again, remember, if you're going to use shrink tubing, make sure you put your shrink tubing on your wire before you do it all, otherwise it's too late. Let's see, that one's not quite big enough to get around there. Actually, once I shrink that, it'll probably be fine, but we won't need this one. If that doesn't work, we can always use electrical tape, like I said. So we'll crimp that first. I like to go with the male end on the bottom, like that. If you go with the male end on the top, the connector is split on the top there. I find that that can actually split the connector a little bit. And you don't want to go crazy on that, but you want to squeeze enough that you know that it's not going to come loose easily. And that's in there pretty well, and we'll go ahead and crimp this. I'm squeezing pretty hard, but not going crazy. That way it's, and then you can always kind of test it. You don't want these things coming loose. Get that in there. There we go, crimp that. Good squeeze. So now that's pretty good. Now all I need is a little heat to bring all that together. All right, so a little heat, and now I'll be able to shrink. So this connector actually has shrink tubing on it, so you'll see that shrink as I go. Awfully convenient. And then technically this is probably enough. I don't need to add anything else. But and what I do is almost always overdo things. Put that over there. A little extra shrink tubing on there. Nice and tight, sealed from water, looking good. All right, so here's that orange wire that goes to the coil that normally mounted here. I just moved this out of the way just to give a little extra space. That goes up here. And then this is the longer wire from the kill switch. I cut it a little bit shorter because I don't need it all. And then I will give myself a little bit of threads here, like that. And as always, kind of twist those a little bit so they don't get as frayed. And I did put some wire loom on there. You don't have to do that, but it just gives a little extra protection and makes it look nicer. So I like this original equipment protector, so I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm just going to cut it a little bit, just to expose a little bit of wire here. Maybe just a little more. There we go. So now we got plenty of wire there. I'll snip that just a little bit. Note that I have some room on this one to work with. Okay. That. Then we'll expose a little wire on there. That. I got my butt connector here. I'll go in there like that. And then for this one, we'll get some threads or get some wire exposed. Cut just a little more of this. There we go. All right. Okay, so we got a little bit there. I'm going to match that up with this one here. Kind of like that. And twist those two together. I'm going to cut some of the excess of this off. All right, so now I got a little bit bigger butt connector. Put that on there. Make sure it's on there good. Give it a little crimperoo. Make sure they're pretty even. That way I don't exclude one.
kind of pulling the butt connector upwards as I'm crimping, making sure I don't cut anything else in the meantime. Give it a nice strong crimp. Awesome. And then, well, first we'll put our shrink tube on. Now I had to get a little bit bigger so it fits over that thing. We'll see if this shrinks up enough, but one way or the other it'll be fine. Like I said, you can always use electrical tape if you don't want to be fancy with shrink tubing. Set that up there. And get that. It's a pretty big connector, so butt connector that is. So I'm gonna actually double that up a little bit more. Get a little bit more wire exposed there. I'm actually gonna just fold it over just a little bit like that. Just gives because this is a pretty big inner diameter of that butt connector, so just gives it a little more to grab onto. All right, give it a little tug, just make sure it's not loose. Get a good connection there. And then we can shrink our shrink tubing here. Careful not to burn yourself or melt anything. Keep in mind your ATV is powered by gasoline, so just be a little bit careful with open flames. Alright, so here everything is installed. Use a few cable ties or zip ties to kind of hold things in place. You don't want anything moving around, rubbing. I want it to also look nice. And there that is installed. You want to make sure it has nice smooth functioning. I actually found that, I mean, this is really the only place I could mount it on these kind of unique bars, but I actually had to clearance this on the opposite side, otherwise it was rubbing on the back side of the brake master cylinder mount to the bars here, and it wasn't actually switching. So you want to make sure before you actually go ahead and trust it to work that it actually does work. See, goes in, and then we'll try it with it running here. There it is.